Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is my new Shirogorov F3. Just the base F3 in LMAX. It is a newer version with, in this case, emerald Alutex scales, which I find to be extremely appealing. What is Alutex? We're going to talk about it. It's a material that's been around for quite a while, but every now and then you hear about it in the knife world, and I've got some details for people who might not know. By the way, this is the emerald Alutex version. The camera does not know what to do with this color, so this is one of the rare situations where this camera is really changing the color. Visually, this looks much more aqua in the camera, and in person, it is way closer to green. Still definitely a blue-green, but way closer to green than what you're seeing. So anyways, I picked this knife up from Recon One. I do not have affiliate links for Recon One. That's where I buy my Shirogorov knives. So I paid full price for this. They don't know that I bought it from them or I'm doing this video. But I do highly recommend shopping at Recon One. They've been excellent. And if you're looking for Shirogorov production knives or custom knives, that's the place to go. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me. Let's go ahead and do some specs here, and then we'll talk about this knife and why I think it is probably the best priced Shirogorov knife on the market. What a teaser. We have to sit around for the whole video. Yeah, you do, because I gotta give you all the other stuff first. Or you can fast forward, whatever you want to do. Overall length coming in the same as most Shirogorovs, 8.75 inches, blade length 3.85 inches, and cutting edge roughly the same. It's like almost 4 inches of blade and cutting edge. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. How about up against the Shirogorov F3 NS? It is identical in size, but not in terms of thickness and some other elements. This knife, this was my favorite Shirogorov knife, and it's still definitely one of my favorites. It's got some cool little differences in design elements, right? And I always said that, like, you know, dollar for dollar value, specifically when it comes to Shirogorov knives, it's going to be the F3 NS, right? And until I handled this guy. This guy is substantially less expensive than this guy. And I honestly think there are design elements of this knife that make it better. So we'll talk about all those differences, but mainly this is thicker and has some different teeny tiny little embellishments, like almost trivial embellishments. And it is, for some reason, substantially more money. So anyways, let's put it up against some other knives. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. So up against the 8010 and the 8020.5, you can see here it's a pretty big knife. It's not nearly as big and robust as the 8010, but it is longer for sure, with way more cutting edge. That's something that you will get with Shirogorov knives, is very complete ratios. A near 1-to-1 ratio between the blade and handle, which is part of the reason why people enjoy the aesthetic of Shirogorov knives so much. There's a very clean and very obvious balance of blade and handle, and they kind of look like folding steak knives in the best way. Anyways, up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3, much bigger than both, and way more cutting edge. Holy moly, way more cutting edge. Let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. How's the action? Shirogorov knives are known for good action, aren't they? Yes, they are. Whoa, wowzers. Really good. Not just fall shut. That's one thing, right? You can get fall shut action on a cheap knife. Control and frictionless, smooth, controlled, consistent, right? That's what we want to look for. That's how I define a nice high quality action. I actually don't like action where the blade guillotines into the closed position too quickly. Kind of like that first one there. That was me just turning the knife too quickly. But as you can see, removing or releasing the lock bar, which has got plenty of room to do so, letting the flipper tab drop to my thumb and then turning the knife, which, by the way, got to be honest with you, it is close to double clutch, just like the F3. You really have to get it there and make sure that your thumb is in exactly the right spot. And the way that you do that is not by disengaging the lock bar at the top. Because if you do that, by the time that flipper tab hits your thumb, that detent ball is not quite through the ramp. And there is a detent ball ramp on this guy, and that makes it a little tricky to find out where the detent ball is. I find it a little bit ironic that the whole idea of the detent ball ramp is to create a smooth transition from the detent ball being off the ramp or off the lock bar to being on it. I don't like having the ball like slowly start from the off the liner lock position and then just ramping up on it. I want to move the lock bar completely out of the way and let the blade touch my thumb there with the flipper tab and have the ball be completely up and on the face of the blade. Anyways, you can achieve this by disengaging the lock bar a bit lower and having the flipper tab contact your thumb near the last possible moment, which sounds tricky and risky, but once you do it a couple of times, you realize it's not. It ends up being second nature. Once you've done that, which you don't have to, by the way, if you really want to, you can simply do this, right? Either way, however you like to experience this knife, the disengagement of the lock bar, that pivot action is really, really nice. And while there are plenty of knives out there that are made by different companies that have their own really nice high quality action, Shirogorov still, while they're not, I'm not going to call them like the kings of action anymore. They like 10 years ago or maybe less than that, 5 years ago, Shirogorov still was kind of standalone in that department. They have many contenders challenging their kingdom, but Shirogorov knives still have some of the very best action in the knife world. It's not just the pivot action though. The flipper tab is awesome. The detent is awesome. The feeling of flipping this knife is wonderful. It's definitely the action that you would want considering how expensive this knife is. So, essentially what I'm saying is action is good. Let's do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. This guy is definitely thicker. Not insanely thick, but it is thicker, and it is also beautifully contoured. We will talk about that. Oh boy, the ergonomics on this knife. Holy moly. Anyways, the length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. This is really, in my opinion, where Shirogorov knives in general shine. And especially the F3, which is not a solid titanium build. This is a knife that has way more blade and is a lot bigger than the PM2, but folded up is essentially the same overall length while not being quite as tall. These knives are amazingly compact. Like, you're still carrying a large knife, but it's amazing how compact they are in the folded up state. And this one's even thinner than the standard F3, which I have ranted and raved about for years. So anyways, let's do a hardware check. Let me get out my tools, which are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel or my pinned comment. But they won't be useful today because this is a Shirogorov knife and it has technically proprietary hardware. I'm going to be honest with you guys. You can take a couple of old credit cards or library cards or whatever, and you can tape them together, and then you can sand the edges down where they come together and create a perfectly shaped tool that will allow you to adjust the pivot on your Shirogorov knife without dicking up the edges. Yeah, you could use a flathead screwdriver. You'll dick up the edges. It shouldn't matter because it's a knife, right? Yeah, if you bought it and you don't care, go ahead. Use a flathead screwdriver. They make a tool for this, but you got to pay for it. Guess what? It's expensive. So my suggestion is use a couple of credit cards or something like that, something rigid, right? And then you can tape them all together, glue them together, and then just sand it down and make your own customized tool. It does work. I've done it before because I used to own the tool for this, and I thought that's stupid. I'm not going to use that. You just use the credit cards and hold them in. Yeah, it might, over time, you might sort of bend or tear away at the edges of your custom tool. And guess what? You just make another one, which if you've looked in your wallet lately, you probably have enough material in there to do that with stuff that you're not making. And then make the other end of it fit the smaller heads. There's a number of other ways to do this. This is just how I do it. It's the least irritating way, the least expensive way to do it, least irritating, and it definitely will not mess up the hardware, which does look really, really good. It is annoying that they still use this stuff, though. As cool as it looks, I do like that. I think it looks really, really neat. It is annoying. Like, I would be over the moon if Shirogorov was like, all right, we're doing Torx. I'd be like, oh, great. Not to say that I've ever had to adjust my Shirogorov knives. they've stayed the same, right? But eventually you might want to, especially if you choose to use your Shirogorov knife, which plenty of people do. Not everybody, but plenty of people, right? So anyways, let's weigh this knife. What are we looking at for materials? The Alutex, we're looking at Elmax for the blade. We're looking at titanium for the liners, and titanium backspacer, titanium clip. So the weight on this guy, I'm going to guess this weighs just under or over, probably a little over 5. No, a little under 5. Oh, interesting. How much does this guy weigh? The same. Probably because this is carbon fiber and this is Alutex, which is similar but not the same. Alutex, to my knowledge, is slightly heavier because of the presence of aluminum. So there you go. There's your weight. Not bad. I mean, considering you're looking at a 4-inch blade, ratios are not perfect, but the balance is right where you're going to put your index finger, which makes this feel beautiful. Oh my goodness. I cannot stress this enough. This has been my, if you didn't know, when we're blocking out everything else, including price, we're talking about just design, right? Function and comfort and all of that. I've hailed the F3 NS as one of, if not the very best knife designs ever. And again, people are going to be bringing up locking systems and heat treatment and value. And I'm blocking all that out, and I'm just going with caveman senses, right? Picking this up, feeling it, holding it as a tool, disengaging the lock bar, right? Allowing the blade to fall in the closed position, flipping the knife. Just my human senses interact with this. I love this. It's all the little bells and all the little chimes and the little sparkles go off in my brain, and it's, oh, I love it. Anyways, let's measure the blade stock thickness, because that is different. And one of the things that I think makes this knife, or this version of the knife, better. Blade stock thickness of the standard F3 is coming in at 128 thousandths, making it an actual normal thickness, right? Whereas the F3 NS and a lot of Shirogorov knives come in at 145 to 150. This guy coming in at 150 thousandths, which is needlessly thick. This allows for the cutting geometry of this knife to actually be, implemented properly. It cuts better is what I'm saying. Let's move on to the meat and potatoes. Why do I love the ergonomic lines of this knife so much? Because they are perfection. Oh my gosh, this knife is so comfortable. If you own this knife, then you know. It is beautifully comfortable. The upward sweeping of the flipper tab means that it's not digging back into your hand. Endurer knives. It's incredibly comfortable that the blades, the scales are contoured, in this case actually textured, knocked down at the edges, beautiful swell in here. The curvature is wonderful. Milled clip that is very shallow and knocked down at the edges, so not uncomfortable at all. There's just not a sharp edge on this knife outside of the sharp edge itself. The blade, right? Incredibly comfortable. The jimping on this, while not perfect, is also definitely better than the useless jimping on the F3 NS. This blade, while made out of M390, will definitely not perform as well as this blade. This guy is thinner behind the edge. Elmax, Shirogorov does a good job heat treating both, right? M390, if you're comparing apples to apples, right? Same exact geometry, heat treated, optimally. M390 will perform better at identical geometry in terms of edge retention, right? Now, Elmax is no slouch in the edge retention department and is a lot closer to M390 than I think a lot of people realize. So if you adjust the final edge geometry, it brings Elmax into a performance zone that is definitely going to be better, right? Is it going to be identical, right? In terms of edge retention or edge performance, it's going to be identical. I think the geometry of this Elmax blade is going to allow it to perform better than this one. Of course, there's a lot of variables there, and there's plenty of arguments to be made, so you can think whatever you want. I actually prefer Elmax as a blade steel composition over M390. I don't really care if M390 costs slightly more to purchase before you turn it into something that resembled a blade. I don't really care about that. The balance of Elmax, I think, is better for a knife. It is much closer to S35VN, which is a composition that's actually made for pocket knives. So couple that with the fact that this has better cutting geometry, and I find this blade to be superior. So part of the reason that they charge less for this knife than this one is because this blade is Elmax. That's fine with me because I think this blade is better. On top of that, Alutex, what is this stuff? It's aluminum and glass based, but it's extremely similar to carbon fiber in terms of durability. I believe because it's aluminum based, the color comes from anodizing. Now I could be wrong about that because I also know that Alutex can be dyed. I found plenty of forums where people were doing this. But I think Alutex is actually anodized. And if you know better than me, or you know exactly how Shirogorov does it, then you are welcome to correct me. But this presence of Alutex, right, if it looks like liquid metal, that's what it looks. This is gorgeous. This material is absolutely insane. And it is textured. Really nice. Nice little texture there, right? No bald spot under the clip, which is unfortunate. You're definitely going to fight this pocket clip, right? The tension on this is insane, and it's textured, which is one of the, really the only shortcomings of this design is that the fact there. But it's the same on this. It's just the carbon fiber is a lot smoother, even though it is textured. So something else that's different between these two are these little textured spots in the carbon fiber that is just not present here. I don't know that I care. The hardware itself is smaller on the standard F3, which plenty of people know about. And then this also has a pivot collar. I find this to look better. I don't care if the hardware's bigger, right? I mean, if that's part of the reason why they're charging more, I would say, again, like W for the standard F3, because I don't care. Same with the body screws. The body screw on the F3NS is a little larger, right? Pocket clip screw, well, the pocket clip is identical. The body screw, or the pocket clip screw is, again, a little bigger on the F3NS. Backspacer also has a gear pattern on the F3NS, where it does not have a gear pattern on the F3. I kind of like this backspacer better. I just, the more I look, I'm like, yeah, this is better. Like, this is better. This is better. The only thing that's not as good as the in and out is the in and out of the pocket experience, which Shirogorov could have easily just left a bald spot on that. I don't know why they wouldn't do that, right? Unless it's there and I'm just not seeing it. But no, you can see it's definitely textured under there. So that was a weird choice. The other thing that's different, I guess you could make an argument that this definitely, the blade looks like it has a better or a more polished finish on it. And you'd be right. This has more of a tumbled finish. This is more of like a, almost like a blasted or like a glass blasted finish. It's subtle, but it is definitely more premium looking on this guy. So I guess you could give the W to the F3NS there. The action feels almost identical. The detent on this on the F3NS is slightly lighter, so this is a little bit more satisfying to flip, but there's subtle variation. I own another F3 and the action, I own another F3NS and the action is slightly better than this one, and it's a little bit smoother in the drop. So there might be a little bit of variation there. So yeah, just a lot of things that make me like this knife better, but man, either way, the ergonomics here, beautiful, beautiful ergonomics and beautiful cutting geometry as well. This gets relatively thin, but man, through paper here, which doesn't really prove anything. Oh my goodness. So wonderful. And admittedly, I think I said this in the unboxing, it's not that much different. If it's better, it's subtly better, right? I think a lot of what people are going to experience, you know, and deem as better will come down the road, which is going to be pretty rare, because I think the average person is definitely not going to buy both of these knives and use them both long enough to tell. But if someone was going to do it, I'd put my money after, you know, using both of these continuously and sharpening both of them multiple times, this one is going to come out on top, right? Which is good, because it costs over $100 less. I love the look of this. I love this Alutex material, and after handling this one and getting to look at it and just enjoy it, I don't have this material in my collection outside of this knife. I love this material, and I would love to own more Shirogorov knives with Alutex scales. Your reds and blues and purples, just substantially more colorful and more vibrant and more reflective than your colored carbon fiber, right? Even that F3NS I have in the Aqua Technicarbo isn't quite as impressive. I just find this material to be substantially more impressive. I don't think it's a cheap material. I think it's actually pretty expensive, you know, relative to the other materials that you would expect to see at this price point. So I think that's probably why we don't see it very often. There is still a lock bar insert on the inside of this titanium lock bar. They still add this lip on the lock bar. It looks like this is incredibly early lockup, but it's not. It's actually engaging much deeper than you might expect. I think maybe somewhere we can see this. Where's the part where it's engaging? Is it right? I can't actually tell exactly where it's engaging, but it should be right, almost right behind the flip. There it is. I'm sorry, I'm just dumb. So you can see right there, that little black spot is where it's engaging, which isn't an enormous percentage to the lock face of the blade, but it's much more than what is suggesting here. It kind of slants back and in as you go deeper into the knife. You would be able to see it. It just looks like it's super early here. What's weird is that they add a lip on that titanium lock bar, which creates a maximum amount of lockup for the knife. I don't like that. Let it continue, because once it wears so much that it's all the way over and that little lump of titanium is stopping it from going any further, every time it locks up, it just wears more material away. So at some point, you get early lock rock. That's all that's doing. Now, why is that not a problem? Number one, the amount of time and flips that would need to take place for that to actually happen is crazy. You're talking about a decade, maybe 2 decades of using this knife normally. Number two, it has a steel lock bar insert, so all you need to do to correct it is pop that out. It's just weird that they would do that, right? They did it on the, they've been doing that for a long time. It's the same way on the F3 NS here. You can see this one's engaging a little deeper, not much. So I've had this for a couple of years now, and I flip it all the time. So it's not going to wear in that quickly. It's just a little nitpick from me. But yeah, still steel lock bar insert in there, and still milling for weight reduction, which is the same on both knives as far as I can tell. I think both lock bars are actually the same. Like, both liners are exactly the same thickness. Sorry, I wasn't told. So you can see here between the F3 NS and the F3, it looks like exactly the same thickness of lock bar, and it's just a difference in the blade stock thickness there, which would make sense. No mounting for lefty, which is a bummer. I wish Shirogorov would find a way to do that. Not that it's impossible, it certainly is, but makes it a little more tricky when you got a thin titanium liner underneath. Not even a thick, you have a titanium liner underneath scales, right? So if they're going to do the wraparound thing, that makes it a little tricky. But there are ways to do that. It'd be nice, right? A lot of them involve putting an extra screw out here, which people don't want to see, but I'm sure lefties would appreciate it. The truth is that I think they do make left-handed Shirogorovs. They're just not production knives, or maybe I'm wrong about that. I feel like, unless my memory is just not serving me correctly, I think they have actually done a Quantum Ursus in left hand. But if I'm wrong, you let me know, because I've got a lot of knife information in my head, and a lot of it overlaps and gets mixed up. There's a lanyard bar or loop right here, which I think is actually pretty well implemented. If you can do it in a way that doesn't affect people who aren't going to use a lanyard, which is most of us, and when I say most of us, I mean well over 99.999% of, it's not even a made-up percentage. That's accurate. That's how small the percentage of people are. People are always like, you make fun of people who use lanyards, but you advocate for left-handed people. That's 10% of the population, okay? So if you're not horrible at math, then what you should deduce from that is that's way more people, okay? So yeah, sometimes I give the lanyard crowd a little bit of crap, but the true lanyard folks know that they represent essentially 0 people, right? So it's a joke. You can enjoy whatever you want, right? But my thing with the lanyard loop or lanyard holes, number one, a lanyard hole is a thing that should never be on a knife ever. You're going to make room on the knife, which makes it more difficult to appropriately place the thing that is far more important, which is the pocket clip. That should be optimized. We should never have to work around a lanyard hole, not when the option can be part of the backspacer or a bar, or my favorite option, non-existent, right? So the best way to do these things is to make them part of the backspacer and implement them in a way that is aesthetically pleasing and not at all in the way for everybody else, right? So this isn't ultimately what I'm saying is that this is a nice way to do this.
We have a lock bar that's located in the same spot that it always is. Nice shouldering there. No blade play up, down, left to right. No lock stick. Close to double clutch, but not. No pivot lash. Incredibly smooth and consistent. Here, with a beautiful and absolutely perfect detent. And then we have perfect centering, as should always be the case with Shirogorov knives. How much is this knife? $750. Oh my God, you made it sound like that was actually going to be a reasonably priced knife. It's not a reasonably priced knife. It's a reasonably priced Shirogorov, which is a totally different thing. Yes, there are Shirogorov knives that cost less money. I find them to be substantially less impressive. This is the most impressive dollar for dollar Shirogorov knife. I'm a little biased because I love this design so much, the F3. But this version of the F3, which, you know, at first glance, you know, appears to be a dumbed down version, actually ends up looking better. And ultimately, it might take quite a bit to prove it. Ultimately, it should perform better too. I would say if you're considering picking up a Shirogorov knife and you're uneasy because of the amount of money that you're going to have to spend, look no further than the F3, right? They pop up periodically in a wide variety of, you know, scale materials. You're almost guaranteed to get a basic stonewashed F3 blade, F3, LMAX blade. It's obviously an F3 blade. That's the, the model. But you're almost guaranteed to get a basic stonewashed blade, right? I forgot one other element that is different. Technically, the blade shape is slightly different. You see that right at the end? This has this smoother transition to the tip. This comes here and comes slightly in, which is fine. I think this looks better. It looks more Shirogorov-y, right? But anyways, yeah, this guy is going to be, if it's still the same price as when I bought it, it's like $850 to $900, which is still less than your average Shirogorov. I think the average price of a production Shirogorov is now at like $1,100 or something, especially if you're looking at F95s. But $750 for this feels pretty great. I think they might actually make versions of this that are slightly less. The least expensive Shirogorov knife that's full size that I've ever seen is the Quantum Ursus, which I think can come in as low as $650 or less. And it's a good knife. I'm not quite as impressed with it as this one. So my suggestion for people looking to dip into Shirogorov for the first time is wait for the right F3. That's the one that's going to impress you. I promise. This is the one where you're going to go, oh God, I see what he means about the ergonomics. Because the Quantum, while it's less expensive, the Quantum Ursus, it doesn't feel as good ergonomically. It feels a little awkward, right? And it can leave a lot to be desired. This is ergonomic perfection. This feels good. It's also got the right thickness of handle and contouring and curvature. It feels like a big full-size knife. It just feels like what you would expect. But this textured Alutex or whatever material you end up going with, right? I think you'll be a lot more impressed. Now, a lot of them come in like G10 or you know, micarta or whatever, and those are a little bit underwhelming. If you can get one with a more specialized material like Alutex, I think it helps drive that, you know, feeling home that you made a good purchase. The reality of it is that all Shirogorov knives are overpriced, right? And it's not just because they're a knife and they're hundreds of dollars. That's what a lot of people think, is that any knife over, I mean, ask whoever, right? You ask somebody who's been a part of the knife world for a long time that buys a lot of expensive knives what overpriced means. They'll have their own definition, but it'll be completely different than somebody who has never spent more than $20 on a pocket knife and doesn't have any familiarity with this part of the knife world, right? Those people are going to tell you any knife that costs more than whatever it is that they spend on a knife because they have no idea what goes into a knife that makes it cost so much more money. Will this knife perform that much better than a $30, $40, $50 knife, $100 knife? No, but that's not why people buy these. And that's not why they cost, not because the company's making a $20 knife and charging $750 for it. No, the tolerances cost substantially more money, the manufacturing costs, right? The material cost, and making knives like this consistently. Those are just some of the elements, but there's tons of them. Whether or not you want it or need it, totally different thing. But these factually cost a lot more money to make than your simple pocket knives. Is this knife really worth, is the $750 asking price really fair? Or $850, $900, $1,000, right? The $650 or so for the Quantum Ursus. No, I don't think so. And I think if these were entirely produced in Russia, which is where Shirogorov knives are technically made, then I think that would make a lot more sense. But I even more so as the years have gone by, I've got questions about where all of these things are made. Some of this is very perfect. And Shirogorov has always been that brand that makes a near perfect knife, if not a perfect knife, right? But it's really perfect. And if you've been living under a rock or you haven't, been aware or around in the knife world for the last 10 to 20 years, hearing that China makes perfect knives might come as kind of a shock to you. But yeah, they make close to perfect knives. So when something is a little too perfect, the rest of us smell Chinese manufacturing. So my guess is that some of this knife is produced in Russia and a lot of it is outsourced to who knows. Whoever it is, they're doing a great job. What percentage of this is actually made in Russia? What percentage is China? I don't know, but I'm going to guess at least some of it is. I have no way to prove that. It's just after handling so many knives, right? But I'm going to guess that they're keeping these knives marked up and they're making a lot more money, when the labor costs for some of this stuff is less, considering some of it might be made in China. Again, don't know that. Just guessing, right? So $750, a good price for a Shiro? Yes. A good price for a knife? Not really. You can get pretty competitive, right? But it's so hard to do this review because realistically, this is a very, very nice knife at $750, right? But we still have to consider where it's made. Not just because China because their labor costs are lower, right? So we're being charged, assuming that there's a big chunk of it made in China, we're being charged for nothing, right? On a U.S. made knife that is identical in terms of, let's say we're comparing a U.S. made version of this that's identical, not that would be good because that would be a copy, but just for argument's sake, identical in performance, identical in materials, right? But the U.S. knife costs more money because of where it's made. Well, that's a cost that can't be helped, right? Now, you can turn away from that and not pay for it, and that's your own choice. Me personally, yeah, if I get an opportunity to support a U.S. knife maker, then I'm going to do that. Even if I'm giving more money, you could say, well, you're paying more for nothing. I'm paying more because it's made in the United States, and those are costs that U.S.-based company or, manufacturer can't help. But I am in this way investing back into a U.S. business. So that's important to me. It won't be important to everybody, right? But I don't want to pay that same markup. I know, again, it's Russia, right? Manufacturing costs in Russia are going to be higher than China. I'm not going to pay that as if the whole thing is made in Russia when it's not, right? But again, can't prove it. It just feels like this. I need to know. I need to know what the inside of the facility looks like. And I want to see them making these parts. So I don't think we're ever going to see that. Gone on a long time here in this video. Ultimately, do I recommend this knife? Pretty much exclusively to people shopping at this price point and for people who have a fascination with Shirogorov knives. Yeah, to you guys, yeah, go ahead, knock yourself out. It's really cool. You'll love it, right? To pretty much everybody else, no. You can get, if you're looking for performance and utility, you can pay way less money, right? You can get the same, very similar fit and finish and quality from a Chinese knife, a purely Chinese knife, right? You gotta specifically want this stuff. So yeah, that's really who I recommend it to. I'm very happy with this purchase. I'm going to keep this in my collection, and this might be my favorite Shirogorov in my collection. But I'm not done buying the F3. I'm going to keep buying the F3. I think that's my favorite model. So I hope you guys can make sense of this review. I just want to be honest and make sure that people understand who this knife is for and who's going to get the most joy out of it. But I think that's it. I'm going to just keep repeating myself over and over again. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.